If you've been following the channel, you'll know that recently I made some rivers for our 10mm fantasy battles. Now, having made the rivers, it's no good having our armies stood on each bank, glowering and shouting at each other. They need a way to get across the river in order to get to grips with the enemy. So, today on Dragon's Teeth, we're building bridges. The two types of crossing I'm going to be looking at doing today are fords, which we'll cover in a bit, but we're going to start with a basic wooden bridge. So first things first, we need to get our measurements, and as we know with the Fantastic Battles rules that we're using, for 10mm our figure base size is 40mm, so the bridge obviously needs to be wide enough to accommodate a single unit. So what I'm using are these lolly sticks. In fact, everything I'm using today, these sort of lolly sticks, matchsticks, the smaller sticks, are all from my local Hobbycraft. Almost as good as B&M, my favourite shop. It's the sort of shop where you go in and you find stuff that you didn't know you need. So all this is available quite cheaply from Hobbycraft. So two of those spread apart a little gives me my width, and the river width I decided on eventually was 60mm. I think these are about 130mm long. Oh, actually they're just under 150mm long, so I can easily get two parts, one bridge out of each piece. So I'm going to make up two bridges today. So I'm going to start by finding the halfway point on the stick there, and we'll cut these in half. So what I'm going to do now is cut these in half. I'm not going to trim the end off because I'm going to use this little round part as an edge for a down ramp. The bridge will be sitting a little bit up above the river, so we need a sort of down ramp at the end. So there's my four pieces for the main part of the bridge. Now for the bridge supports, I've got these smaller sticks, and it just so happens that these are about 40mm wide, so a nice coincidence there. So just to raise the bridge up above the river level, I'm going to put two of these at each end of the bridge, and that will do for our supports. So the next thing is to just glue these together, making sure I've got that 40 width base width there, so everything should be the right size. And there's the underside of our two bridges. So I'm going to flip those over and we'll do the planking on the top. I'm actually going to switch glue. This Evo stick glue is quite old, it's very watery, very runny. So I think from now on I'm going to switch to my glue gun. So there's our basic bridge construction. What I'm going to do for the planking is, again from Hobbycraft, big bag of matchsticks. So I'm just going to spread some glue on and then lay these across the span there. So there's the basic structure done, and as you can see that's going to fit the 40mm base quite nicely. So what I'm going to do now is make some ramps for each end. I've left a gap here because I'm probably going to use some card or maybe some plastic card, and I'll butt it up to the matchsticks there and then lay some more matchsticks on top, so that should make a nice secure joint at the ends of the bridge. Right, that's both bridges done and the end ramps. I'm just going to take another thin strip again, another Hobbycraft item, and I'm just going to make a sort of rail or edge along the side just to tidy things up a touch. Just to create a little bit more height, I've also added an extra base on at the bottom there, and also just glued another matchstick onto the ramp because I noticed they're just starting to curl up a little bit, so I just stuck a matchstick on there just to keep those ramps straight, and obviously I can trim that excess off once everything has dried. So that's the bridges both constructed now, and I've given a base undercoat, a spray of black matte. So I'm going to paint over that in brown, and as I said before, for terrain I'll just use cheap acrylics. This stuff just gets slapped on. There's certainly no need to use your expensive speed paints or anything like that for this kind of thing. That was an interesting noise. A little bit of water in there. So there's both bridges painted, and all I'm going to do to finish them off is give each one a wash, and then I'm going to go over and just to pick out some highlights and give some sort of texture, I'm going to dry brush in a lighter brown. So there's our highlighting done. Now the particular campaign setting that I'm using these bridges for, our 10mm fantasy campaign, it's set in a sort of post-apocalyptic wasteland that has been abandoned for centuries, so these bridges are quite old and decrepit, which is quite handy because that's how stuff looks when I build it. So these will fit nicely. I don't have to worry about them being too tidy or anything else. But just to increase that effect, I'm just going to finish them off by applying a little bit of green scatter here and there, just to represent moss and weeds, that kind of stuff. There's our two bridges done then. Just got to give these a spray of varnish to seal them. And next I'm going to look at making the folds, and for those I'm going to go back to using the plastic that I used to make our river. So I've cut just another square of this plastic off. Honestly, I've got so much of it, I think I'm going to be using it for every project from now till next Christmas. Now the first thing I want to think of is what size is my fold. Of course, with Fantastic Battles, at least in 10mm, we know we've got our 40mm base width. So I thought a narrow fold has got to be at least 40mm wide in order to let units pass across in column formation. We could also do a wider fold as well. You could go to 2 base widths, for example, but I'm just going to start with this single base width. So of course we want some space on each side, because what I'm going to do is taper the fold in, cross the river and then out again, just to give a nice effect. So the first thing really is just to mark my inner edges. So there's my 40mm. That's my bridge part, if you like, and then I can sort of taper that in from here. And of course the width is going to have to correspond to the river, so in this case I'm going to keep that at about 60, so that's going to go to there. Again, none of this has to be particularly precise because we're replicating natural terrain, and one thing we know about nature is that it might be beautiful, but it's not particularly precise in terms of form. There's not much that is symmetrical or in a directly straight line. So that's my rough fold shape. Next thing is to cut that out, and I'm probably going to go over rather than under, because it's always better to have something a little bit larger than you need it in this case than smaller, I think. So I'm just going to go to the other side of my guidelines there. So I guess I could just lay that across my river to denote the ford, but you know, I think we can make a little bit more of an effort than that. So I'm going to put some PVA on here, then I'm going to put some scatter, some brown scatter, just to make this look like earth or mud. The nice thing with this being transparent is I can sort of cover the ends quite heavily, but then have a lighter cover in the middle, so we get a bit of that river showing through. Hopefully that will give something of the effect of shallow water. We live in hope. Let's see. So just my regular PVA. Now, because of what happened with the water on the paint, I'm not really going to add any water onto this. I'm going to brush it on as is. So we want that quite thick at the edges there. So that's my glue in place. Let's get the scatter. So this is just the standard brown stuff I use for most of my figure bases at the moment, or at least actually my 28mm, my 10mm I'm using more of like a grass terrain. So it won't quite match, but as I say, the effect really for this is more to make it look like dirt or mud. I should probably have used a teaspoon or something for this. This is a slightly awkward way of doing it. What I have noticed is, of course, those pen lines that I drew on are showing through. So I'm just going to see if I can dollop a little bit more glue on this over those lines, just to cover those up. Okay, so there we are. That's not too bad for a first attempt. Again, hopefully we're going to get that sort of water showing through underneath to create that that idea of a ford. It of course doesn't sit on the river, it's just where the water is more shallow. So hopefully that will come across. I'm going to put this aside to dry, and I think, as I said, I'm going to make a couple of others while we're here. 2 bridges and 2 fords over the plastic river. I'm going to have another go at the river because I think I can do a better job than that. And also I'm going to be building some scatter terrain to go along the banks of the river as well, so that will improve the look of that. But I'm pleased with how the bridges have come out. They look, as I say, suitably aged and decrepit for the campaign setting, and the fords look okay. I might have another go at some of those as well. Again, you know, sometimes until you try something, you never really learn those few little tweaks you can make in order to improve it. But they do the job. They'll work for our games, certainly for the near future. And they look good with the figures on. There we are then, a couple of simple ways to get our armies across these rivers, and also solves the problem of concealing joins on the rivers as well. Now, I know that you can get cast parts or 3D printed parts ready-made that might look a little better than this. I might have a go at making a stone bridge in the future. If that doesn't work so well, then yeah, I'll probably shell out and actually buy one. But I think, again, as a start, these will do to get our troops across. And again, to me, they look good enough on a 10mm tabletop. So I hope you found that useful. As always, if you do have any comments or suggestions, please do pop them below, always welcome. And as I always say, if you haven't already, please do like, share and subscribe the channel. We really want to get it growing this year. That's it for today then. Take care, and I'll see you next time.